All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something called organization theory. Now, this isn't just some dusty academic topic. It's actually a powerful lens that helps us see the invisible forces, the hidden architecture that shapes literally every organization you can think of, from that tiny startup down the street to the biggest multinational corporations on the planet.
So here's our game plan. First up, we're going to tackle why theory is actually incredibly practical. Then we'll break down what a theory is even made of, its building blocks. After that, we'll get into the really cool stuff, the three main ways of looking at organizations. We'll even peek under the hood at their philosophical foundations before, tying it all together with a practical framework you can start using right away. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the word theory. For a lot of people, that word just screams abstract, boring, something totally disconnected from the real world. Well, we're about to flip that idea completely on its head.
And this quote from Kurt Lewin, this is really the heart of what we're talking about today. There is nothing so practical as a good theory. What he's saying is that a solid theory isn't just for academics in an ivory tower. No way. It's a tool. It's a map. It's one of the most essential things you can have for actually getting things done in the world.
And look, this isn't just talk. You can see just how real this is across every single part of a business. If you're in strategy or finance, you're using it to figure out how to structure the company to actually hit your targets. If you're in marketing, you're using it to make sure the entire organization is aligned to deliver on that brand promise you're selling. It even helps IT build systems that people can actually use, and it's the bedrock for HR, guiding everything from who you hire to how you navigate massive organizational change. It's everywhere.
Okay, so if theory is this amazing practical tool, what's it actually made of? How does it work? To really use it well, we need to understand its DNA, its basic grammar. Let's kind of pop the hood and see what's inside.
So, at its core, a theory is just a set of concepts and a story about how they're connected. That's it. It takes a few ideas, suggests how they relate to each other, and poof, you have an explanation for something interesting. E equals mc squared is a perfect example. It's a theory that connects the concepts of energy, mass, and the speed of light to explain a fundamental aspect of the universe. Simple but profound.
Right. And if a theory is like a sentence that tells a story, then concepts are the words you use to build it. They're basically mental file folders. They're how we sort and organize everything we think. Think about it. How could you possibly talk about an organization without concepts like leadership or culture or strategy? You couldn't. They're the absolute basic building blocks.
So where do these concepts come from? Well, our brains are constantly doing this thing called abstraction. It sounds complicated, but you do it all the time. It's how you know what a dog is. You've seen thousands of different dogs, big ones, small ones, fluffy ones, and your brain has boiled it all down to the essential dogness of it all. 4 legs, a tail, barks. You've created a general concept by ignoring all the little specific details.
And this little mental trick is a superpower. First, it gives us chunking. This lets our brains process huge amounts of information without getting overloaded. It's why we can think about the concept animals instead of having to picture every single animal we've ever seen. Second, it gives us generalizability. This means a good theory can apply to lots of different situations. But, and this is a big but, there's a trade-off. To use a general theory in a specific case, you have to be the one to add all the specific, messy, real-world details back in.
All right, so we've got the building blocks, concepts, abstraction, theory. Now, for the fun part. Let's see what we can build. We're going to look at the 3 big perspectives in organization theory. And you really should think of these like different pairs of glasses. You can look at the exact same organization, but when you put on a different pair, you see a completely different world.
And I really want to stress this. These 3 frameworks, modern, symbolic, and postmodern, they are not just slightly different flavors of the same thing. They are fundamentally different worldviews. They completely change the questions you ask, the answers you look for, and even what you think counts as knowledge in the first place.
This table really lays it all out. Take a look. The modern perspective, it's all about finding universal laws, kind of like a physicist. It sees organizations as real, objective things that you can measure and optimize. Then you have the symbolic perspective. It says, hold on, organizations are socially constructed. They're all about shared meaning, rituals, stories. It's about understanding from the inside. And then postmodernism comes along and says, they're both wrong. It sees organizations as battlegrounds of power, as texts that we need to deconstruct to see who's really in control. 3 totally different takes.
Now, to really get why these perspectives are so radically different, we have to go one level deeper, into their philosophical roots. And that means we've got to touch on two kind of big words, ontology and epistemology. But don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. Ontology is just about what's real, and epistemology is about how we know what's real.
Okay, so let's start with ontology. What's real? This is where we see a massive split. The modern view is built on objectivism. It says there's one single hard reality out there, and our job is to discover it. An organization is a real thing, like a rock. But the symbolic view is built on subjectivism. It says, nope, reality is something we create together through our interpretations and shared agreements. An organization's culture, for instance. You can't touch it, it doesn't exist on a spreadsheet, it exists only in the minds of the people there. And that fundamental disagreement about reality naturally leads to a disagreement about knowledge. That's epistemology. If you're a modernist who believes in one objective reality, you're probably a positivist. You believe you can find truth using the scientific method, form a hypothesis, test it with hard data, numbers, stats, financials. But if you're a symbolist who believes reality is subjective, you're an interpretivist. You think truth is relative. The only way to get at it is to understand it from the inside, using soft data, by talking to people, hearing their stories, observing what they do.
And then postmodernism comes along and just blows the whole thing up. It says there is no reality outside of language. None. Words don't just describe our world, they literally create it. I mean, think about it. When a manager calls firing people a strategic realignment, they're not just putting a spin on it. From a postmodern view, they are using language to construct a whole different reality. And that means whoever controls the language, well, they control reality. It's a pretty radical idea.
Phew. Okay, that was a lot of pretty abstract stuff. So the big question is, how can you actually use all this? Well, to wrap things up, let's get super practical. I'm going to give you a framework, a kind of toolkit that you can use to analyze any organization you come across.
Think of this like a checklist for doing a proper diagnosis. To really understand what's going on in any company, you need to look at it from all these different angles. What's its environment like? What's the social structure, the org chart, and the informal networks? What technology are they using? What's the culture really like? Even the physical layout of the office matters. And here's the most important part. You have to see how power snakes its way through all of those other things, shaping every single one of them. And really, that's the whole point. You've heard the saying, right? Give someone a fish they eat for a day, teach them to fish they eat for a lifetime. Our goal here hasn't just been to dump a bunch of theories on you. That's just giving you a fish. The real goal is to teach you how to theorize, how to use these ideas, these perspectives, as tools to come up with your own fresh, surprising, and genuinely useful insights. So, let's leave it here. The big takeaway is this. Now that you understand these different lenses, you can't be a passive observer anymore. You now have a choice about which reality you pay attention to inside an organization, and, more importantly, a choice about which reality you want to help create or change. So the question I'll leave you with is, now that you have the tools, what are you going to build?